In 1969, two countries went to war over a game of soccer. Not a riot, not a brawl in the stands. An actual war, man, with an army, an air force, and thousands dead. The history books literally call it the Football War, and honestly, that name undersells it. To understand this, forget soccer for a second and look at a map. El Salvador was tiny and packed with people. Honduras was big and half empty. So for decades, hundreds of thousands of poor Salvadorans crossed the border into Honduras, looking for land and work. They settled, they farmed, they built lives there. Around 300,000 of them. But by 1969, Honduras had its own troubles. Its economy was struggling, and its people wanted someone to blame. So the government passed a land reform law, and it took land from the Salvadoran immigrants to give to native Hondurans. Tens of thousands were forced off their farms and pushed back toward El Salvador. Some were beaten, a few were killed. The newspapers on both sides whipped it into a frenzy, each blaming the other. These two neighbors already despised each other. And then, with the tension already at the breaking point, the two countries were drawn against each other to qualify for the 1970 World Cup. The first match was in Honduras. The night before, Honduran fans surrounded the Salvadoran team's hotel. They honked and set off firecrackers all night long so the players could not sleep a wink. Exhausted, El Salvador lost 1-0 on a goal in the very last minute. And here the story takes its first dark turn. An 18-year-old Salvadoran girl named Emilia Bolaños heard her team lose on the radio and shot herself in the heart. Her country made her a national martyr. Her funeral was broadcast live, with the president and the entire national team marching behind her coffin. 2 weeks later came the rematch in El Salvador. Now it was the Honduran team's turn to suffer. The crowd threw rotten eggs and dead rats through the windows and kept them awake until dawn. At the stadium, instead of the Honduran flag, the hosts raised a dirty old rag. The Honduran anthem was drowned out by boos. El Salvador won 3-0. One Honduran player admitted they were just glad to lose because it meant they might get out alive. After the match, Honduran fans were beaten in the streets. 2 of them died. And across the border, the Salvadorans living in Honduras were suddenly in real danger. Mobs hunted Salvadoran immigrants. Thousands more fled. And the two governments stopped speaking to each other entirely. Because the two sides had each won one match, it came down to a single deciding playoff. On neutral ground in Mexico City, with thousands of police holding the fans apart, El Salvador won it 3-2 in extra time. They had qualified for the World Cup. And on that very same day, El Salvador cut off all relations with Honduras. The soccer was over. The countdown to war had begun. On July 14th, El Salvador struck first. Its air force, a fleet of ancient World War II propeller planes, bombed Honduran airfields. Their bombers were so improvised that crews reportedly shoved the bombs out the doors of converted passenger planes by hand. At the same time, the Salvadoran army poured across the border and pushed deep into Honduras along the main highways. And at first it worked. The Salvadoran troops moved fast and captured several towns. But Honduras ruled the skies. Its planes bombed El Salvador's fuel supplies and blew up its oil depots. And within days, the whole Salvadoran advance simply ran out of gas. Its tanks and trucks stalled for lack of fuel. The other Latin American nations panicked and demanded it end before the whole region caught fire. The entire war lasted just over 4 days, about 100 hours. In those 100 hours, around 3,000 people were killed, most of them Honduran civilians. Hundreds of thousands more lost their homes. Under heavy pressure, El Salvador agreed to a ceasefire and pulled its troops back out of Honduras. Neither side had truly won a thing. But hundreds of thousands of Salvadorans had now been driven out of Honduras for good, flooding back into a tiny country with no room and no work for them. The two economies had been tied together. Now they were shattered. A shared Central American market collapsed and stayed broken for decades. And El Salvador? They got the exact thing they had fought for. They marched into the 1970 World Cup. They lost all 3 of their games, scored 0 goals, and were knocked out in the first round, thousands dead. A region wrecked, all tangled up with 3 games of soccer. Now, historians will tell you, correctly, that the soccer did not really cause this war. The land, the poverty, the immigrants, the hatred, all of that was the gunpowder. It had been building for years. The soccer matches were just the spark that set it off. But what a spark to choose. Because for the rest of history, this will be remembered as the time 2 countries went to war over a game. If history this stupid and this dark is your kind of thing, subscribe. Trust me, there is plenty more where this came from.